Want to make some awesome effects with one set of plugins and no After Effects? Let's talk right after the intro. Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Bruce and I'm really glad you're here. Now, if you watched the last video that I did, it was about moving over to Resolve from Premiere and some of the kind of weird things that you got to look out for there. Now, this video is about using Boris FX Suite. Now, Boris FX has a lot of different programs, and so this is going to be split into actually 3 different videos. This video is going to be about Sapphire, Continuum, and Particle Illusion because they all kind of serve a similar kind of purpose. Now, whether you're a Boris FX veteran or someone new to Boris, or you just have kind of heard about the different things that you can do in Boris, this video is for you. Now, like I mentioned, we're going to be going through Sapphire and Continuum and Particle Illusion. Now, those do work with Mocha. Mocha is integrated into those programs, so we're going to cover that aspect of Mocha, but Mocha will be covered more in depth in the next video, which will also cover Silhouette and Synthize. Now, this is just an introduction, so I'm not going to show you every single effect because there's literally hundreds of different effects within the Boris FX Suite, and there's thousands of presets. So it'd be really impossible for me to cover everything. I'm just going to go through some quick overview demos of the different effects that you can do within the Boris FX Suite and how to combine them with some of the effects in Resolve a little bit. So it'll be more of an overview of the different things that you can do, and I'll do more in-depth videos later on. So make sure you hit like and subscribe so you'll be notified when those come out. So I put together some quick little video clips so you can see how to use the tools in Boris to get the effects that you want in Resolve. So let's go ahead and make some really cool stuff. So here we are in Resolve. The first thing that I want to show you is how effects are organized in Resolve. You have Toolbox, which is a collection of the effects that are included with the free version and the paid version of Resolve. And then there's Resolve Effects, and these are more higher end effects, and they are more for the studio users, which I'm assuming that if you've paid for Boris, you've probably paid the $300 one-time fee for Resolve Studio. And then it's broken down by filters so you can see all different effects that you have included with Resolve. Now, there are a lot of tools that are included with Resolve. Boris just kind of works alongside those, and you can use those to make them better and vice versa. And then Open Effects is where you're going to find the effects from Boris. So those are broken down by filters, and you can actually even break these down by the different tools that are in the Boris suite. So you can go just into the BCC effects, you can just go into the Sapphire effect, then the same thing with generators, and then also transitions. The favorites are structured in the same way. So I can go into my Open Effects and I can see how they're sorted in here as well. So by using the side menu where you have them broken down into folders, it's a lot easier to find them instead of just scrolling all the way through the massive list of all the different effects that you have available to you. You can see how huge this list is. And you can see that I've put stars next to them, and these appear in my favorites folder. So that's how you add an effect to your favorites list. If I mouse over an effect, it automatically gives me a preview of that effect. And the same thing works with the effects from Boris. So say I go in here and I'll just go over the Sapphire and I can add in there, and you can see it's automatically tracking and everything really easy. You can still preview the Boris effects the same way that you preview the built-in Resolve effects. Also, when you're going into the Sapphire and BCC effects, almost every single effect has a number of presets. And the way I always look at presets is that they're just a starting point, because you can actually take that and it eliminates a lot of work to actually get the effect set up, but then you add the preset and then you tweak the preset to give you a really custom look instead of just throwing an effect on, selecting a preset and calling it a day. So presets are just a starting point for your creativity. The first thing that I'm going to show you is a flare designer. So I'll click in here and I'll type in flare, and you can see I have a few different options. I also have a BCC effect, which is a continuum effect for lens flare, and you'll find that there is a bit of crossover between the BCC and Continuum effects and the Sapphire effects. You'll see that there's a little bit of duplication between the two. And when I say duplication, just as in the main concept of the effect, not the actual effect itself. Now, the Continuum effects, when you customize those, you'll find that the interface is a little bit different than the Sapphire interface. So they work a little bit differently, and you'll just kind of find what works best for you. And you'll notice that when I select Sapphire, I have a couple of different options. I have lens flare, which is this one right here, and then I also have lens flare auto track. And the auto track works great. However, what I'm going to show you is this. I want to track these headlights on this car. So when I do Sapphire auto track, what happens is it tracks this bright light back here because it finds the brightest part of the image and it automatically tracks that. There's an issue there where I'm trying to add the lens flare to the headlights right here, but it's picking out the brightest spot, which is back here. So that's an issue. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to add the lens flare effect to the clip. The thing is that it's only adding one lens flare. I want to add two lens flares. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to take it off of here and I'm going to go over into the color page. And what this allows me to do is to add two lens flares. Each one is not affecting the other. So I'll click on the color page, add a node, and now I'll add the lens flare here. Also, one thing you have to be careful of is that lens flare is all one word when you're searching. So if I was to do lens flare, it's not going to find it. So one thing you might want to do is do S underscore lens. That'll narrow it down to just the Sapphire effects. I'm going to add this to this node right here, and you see that how the node reconfigures itself into being the node for Sapphire. The thing is that if I was to add another serial node, now if I add that lens flare again, this node is going to be affecting this node. So what I want to do instead is I'm going to add a parallel node. So I'm going to just kind of clean this up a little bit. I want to track this lens flare to the left headlight. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of my clips. That'll give me a little bit more room. Now what I want to do is I want to add it to the headlight. Now I could grab it and then add in keyframes and everything, but that's going to be a pain. So what I'm going to do instead, and this is what's so cool about the lens flare in Boris FX, is that it integrates Mocha. So I'll click on Edit Mocha and it pulls it up right here. And I don't want to track the pivot, so I'm going to just go ahead and turn that off. So now this is just the hotspot. So I put it over the left headlight, and then I'm going to put the search area around the headlight so it knows what area to search for and it knows where to position the lens flare. So I'll track it forward and backward.
5 minutes later.
Okay, so now it's all tracked. I can either do file save or I can just click X and it'll prompt me to save it. If I don't save it, then none of my work has been saved. So I'll go and click save. And now it's still over here. See how it's still over here and not on the headlight? I need to click on Hotspot uses Mocha. And now it's automatically on there. But this is a super bright flare. I'm going to click on Edit Lens. And it brings up the flare designer, which is really cool. So you can see you have all these different lenses right here that you can pick from. So I'm going to pick out diffraction, and then I can disable any of these features that I want to. So I can disable those. I'm going to disable that so you can see the change in there. So I can make it so the rays aren't quite so bright and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Now I want to do the same thing to right here. So I'm going to go ahead and add lens flare. And now you'll see that it's doing that. Well, what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and click Edit Mocha. And since this is the right headlight instead of the left headlight, I can't just copy and paste the same tracking information onto this one. So I'll just move everything over here and I'll retrack it. And because the clip was significantly longer than the clip that I'm using in the timeline, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shorten the amount that it's going to be tracking to about right there. So I'm not tracking all this extra footage. I know this is not in the clip itself. It probably ends about right here. I'm going to go back. I'm going to find where it was that I tracked this thing originally. So right there. So now I'm going to track it, but I'm not going to be tracking all of this extra real estate over here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on to track it. And now it's going to track it, but it's only going to track it to this part right here where the footage no longer is.
5 minutes later.
Okay, so now the second one has been tracked. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that to close it. Confirm that I want to save it. And then just like I did before, click on Hotspot uses Mocha. I'll select load preset, and I'm going to choose a different preset just to kind of give it a little bit of funky kind of look. Again, this isn't something that you would necessarily want to do when you're working on an actual project, but I kind of want to make this kind of look kind of cool. So I'm going to click on load, and now what I can still do, I don't have to go into the lens flare designer to change things up. I can do everything right here in the inspector. I can turn down the brightness on this, and then the same thing on this one. Also, I can change the rotation. I can turn down the brightness on the hotspot right there. And now, actually, I'm going to go back into the edit page because you'll be able to see things better there. So now, if I play this back, you can see the headlights actually track to the car perfectly. And sometimes there's a little bump in here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but it's pretty cool. So I can go in and I can change up the lens flares however I want. I want to show you a little bit more on the flare designer. So I'm going to go back to this clip right here, which is that, and I'm going to do edit lens. And now I can do all kinds of different stuff in here. So if I mouse over any of these, it shows me what the different elements are that are in there. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this right here. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can do it. I'll do more of a deep dive into the lens flare designer in a later video. You can really edit your lens flares to be really, really cool, to give your client some really cool effects. So I could just go ahead and get rid of that. That's all I got to do is just uncheck it and click OK, and we're done. So that's a really quick introduction to the lens flare designer, which is one of my favorite effects, and how it integrates with Mocha, just like almost all the effects in the Boris suite. Now what I'm going to show you is something that's really cool, because just like in Fusion, you can create all kinds of really cool effects and save those as a preset. But what you can do in Boris is you can do something similar, and it also uses nodes, but it's a way that you can create effects that not only work in Resolve, but also work in programs like Premiere and Avid, Final Cut Pro, all basically anything that Boris can run on. So say if you're working with another editor, even though you're working in Resolve, you can still share those effects that you create in Boris with an editor that is working in Final Cut or Avid or what have you. Not only can you combine different effects, you can choose different presets. So you can do all kinds of crazy stuff. And it still works with Mocha. So it's just an awesome tool. And also I'm going to show you how you can also create your own custom transitions. And then probably the coolest transition I've ever seen. The only thing is it's kind of limited in use. You wouldn't want to use it on a corporate video, for instance. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you the effect builder. It's in my favorites. So I'm going to grab S Effect. We all know that Resolve has its own binoculars. So say if I go into Resolve and I do binoculars, and it's actually one of the standard ones. So say I go in here and I want to put a binocular effect on his feet, and it's listed under the Fusion effects, not the open effects. So there are a few different settings. You know, you can change the eye width here, you can change the eye height, and then you can add a few different effects. But the effect in Boris is just amazing. So we'll go into Open Effects, and this is where S Effect is. Now, as you can see, there's nothing happening with it because we haven't created an effect. So I'm going to click on Load Preset, and this will bring it up, and you can see that there is scanning through all these different presets. So I go into my builder effects, and I have my binoculars. So right now it doesn't look like much. And I'm going to load this in here. So now it loads the binocular effect on there, which basically looks a lot like the effect that I found in Resolve. But what I can do is there's a lot of different stuff here. So there's still the left lens size, there's still the right lens size. I can still change a few different things in here if I want. So I'll go ahead and change that around, what have you. So it's really not a huge difference between the binocular effect that's part of Resolve, but what the difference is in the builder. So I'm going to click on Edit Binoculars. And now what I can do is I can add some really cool effects right in here. And as you can see, it's built a lot like in Fusion. But what I want to do is I am going to add a couple of effects in here. So the first one that I'm going to add is I'm going to add scan lines. And I'm going to do scan lines. Well, should I do scan lines or scan lines mono? I'm going to do scan lines right here. All right. So now I have all these different things. And because I have preview selected node, it's just showing the scan lines node. If I go on to result, it'll show what the final result is like. So I'm going to unselect preview selected nodes. So now I can see what the complete effect looks like no matter what I'm doing. So I'm going to select this shade of green right here. Right? Select that. So now I have kind of that night vision kind of look. And then I also want to add a little bit of glow because, you know, with the night vision look, you get a little bit of glow. So I'll go up into the search bar and I'll search for glow. And you can see I have all these different types of glow. So I can glow the edges, I can do all kinds of things. Now, unlike in the edit page, if I mouse over these, it's not going to show me a preview of what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to select Ultra Glow, drag that over and put that into the flow. And now you can see I get more of this kind of weird kind of look to it. I want to select a preset. So we'll go ahead and click on that and we'll do fast atmosphere, or we'll do boiling glow, or basking, or chrome edge, which would be kind of cool, but it doesn't really fit. So what I'm going to try instead is I'm going to try scanner and see how that looks. So I'm going to click on load, and just to kind of play around with it, you see how it's a little bright. So I'm going to change the color actually to more match the scan lines color, and I'm going to click OK, and then change the fall off and the bias. So now we get that. So now if I click on play, right, now I get this cool scan going across. It just took a couple clicks. It didn't really take a lot. Now what I can do is I'm going to go ahead and tweak this a little bit more. So, and it's all interactive. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull this down a little bit. So now I don't get quite as much in there. So now I've got this really, really cool effect. And I'm going to click on OK and select that the parameters have changed. So what I did was I took that preset as a starting point, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and then I tweaked it so I have this really cool effect that you're not going to find in a lot of places. So it's just a really easy way to do that. So now I want to transition between these two clips. So I want to transition so he's walked up the stairs into the plane, and now he's looking back, and you know, maybe he's looking for the people who are spying on him. And I'm going to add a wipe to this. The thing is that it's not just a normal wipe. So I go into Resolve again. And so I have the Luma wipe here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drag this on here. And so now I have this. So I have that kind of effect to it. So
what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off S effect. So I'll go back over here and we'll just see how this transition works. But what I want to do is I want to do something even cooler. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So I'll go back into my favorites and I'll pull over S transition. It's a similar tool to the effect builder, but it's where you can build your own custom transitions. And as you can see right now, it's just a basic cross dissolve. So that's basically all the initial is. But what you can do is you can do some really cool stuff. So I'm going to select the transition, and just like with the resolve transitions, I can change the length, whatever, of the transition. So I'm going to click on load preset. So you can see I have all these different presets. So, and it gives me a preview of all the different presets. So let's see what this blink does. So it just kind of does a little blink right there. Or I can do cool light leak. So I'll load this onto the clip, and now you can see how the transition looks. It's pretty cool. It gives it a really good, nice little leak. But I want to crank this up, make it a little bit cooler. So I'm going to click on Edit Cool Light Leak. And now I have these from and to. What this allows you to do is to add an effect to the before clip and then a separate effect to the after clip. So right now is a dissolve. I want to just do a wipe. And I have all these different wipes that I can do. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on wipe circle. Now I can change the softness of the edge to kind of give it that kind of look, right? So now if I preview it, I want to change this to a circle out. So that's all I have to do is just click on that. And now it's doing that. So it's pretty cool. The next thing I want to do though is I want to add some parallax strips. So I'm going to do, and I'm going to change this over to the from node. And now you can see what the difference is. So click that. You can see there's all kinds of different possibilities you can do in here, and you can add any of these effects anywhere that you want. And then say I don't like the white circle. So what I can do instead is we'll do other, and we'll do a hyperpole instead. So we'll play that. And then also what I want to do is I want to add a warp magnify in here. So I'm just having fun right now. So that's the really cool thing about this is you can just sit here and just have a blast doing this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that. And now let's see how that looks. And then, you can still tweak different things and, change the size. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over the engine. So now let's see how that looks. Let's get rid of this parallax strips. I don't want to completely delete it, so I'll just click on disable. And so now let's see how that looks. I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and then it gives me a little warning. And now let's see how this looks in the actual timeline itself. So go back to here. So cool. So now this is a transition that I really, really like. As soon as I saw this transition, I was like, wow, that is super cool. It's good for things like sports promos. It's good for commercials, music videos, things where you're looking for really dynamic, really fast kind of transition. So in other words, it wouldn't be for a corporate report, for instance, but it would be really good for something where you want to have something that's really fun, looks really cool. And so you can see now he's in the plane. That's one angle. So it's one angle back away from him. And then the next one is up a little bit closer. he's looking out the window to see what's going on and all that. And it's not really all that exciting. So I'm going to go right between the two clips. And now I'm going to search for Mocha. Actually, I'm going to go into transitions and then do Mocha whip. So drag that on there right now. So now I can go in here and I can click on Edit Mocha. I'll click on right here where it's, where I create the Magic Mask ML layer. And then just like in Resolve, I'll click on his head. That's the best place to start. And it creates a little bit of a mask. And then click down here. So now I've got him completely selected. And it doesn't have to be pretty because of the way that this transition works. But I'll click on Finish. I have them all masked out right here. And then just like I did with the lens flare, is I'll go ahead and track this forward and backwards. Unfortunately, it's not a very long clip that we're doing, so it tracked it really fast. And now I'll close that out and click Save. And now watch this. This is so cool. So, he's looking at the window. And now he's in the seat. So I just think it's the coolest transition ever. So I'm going to go ahead and so you can see it again. So you can see how this would be excellent for a music video or a sports highlight reel or something like that. Another thing that I want to show you really quick is, and this is going to be coming up when I do more of a deep dive into Mocha. So you can see this is the view out the window. So he's looking out the window and all he's seeing is prairie land, which is boring. So we want to see that how he is when he's up in the air. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable this so that you can see this is that's what it actually looks like. And I'm going to show you how to set all that up in Mocha. So when I do the deep dive on the Mocha video, which is coming up next, so you can see how to set that up. So next up, I'm going to show you how to do some basic keying in Boris. A couple different ways to do it. You can do it on the edit page or in the Fusion page, whichever you prefer. The first keying problem we have right here is we have this where it's got the green screen, which is fine, but you also have this leaf up here, which is close enough to this color that you're going to run into some problems keying this, because below this I have this orange solid. So, and this could be an image, it could be an animation, it could be whatever. But for the purpose of this video, we're just going to have it as this ugly orange background so we can see where the key is. There's a lot of different tools that you can use both in Resolve and in Boris, but I'm going to show you a really easy way to do some really good keying strictly on the edit page. So you don't have to go into Fusion if you don't want to. You don't even have to use Mocha if you don't want to. So it's just a really cool thing, and it also takes care of spill and all the different issues that you run into a lot. So I'm going to do a search for chroma key. And obviously it's not in transitions, but it is going to be in filters. So I'm going to choose the Chroma Key Studio. I just happen to really like this because it gives a lot of different options all in one effect. And now click on Effects Browser. Now you can see it's already keyed this out. Now if I click on Apply, you can see I have this ugly orange thing, and also you can see that the key isn't very good. I have all this chatter right here. And then if I go up into the leaf, you can see I have a little bit of orange issues up there as well. So I want to refine this matte so it cleans all of this up. So I'm going to click on View Current Matte, and you can see I have this, and there's this up here where it's affecting the leaf and the plant and all that. And also you can see all the gray area in here. I want this to be completely black, and I want the rest of this to be completely white. So what I can do now is I can do matte cleanup. and I'll turn on matte cleanup and change the black level. So I could change up the black level, and you can see now it's bringing that in there. So I want to bring that down. So that's not what I want to do. And I actually like to work with the numbers instead of the sliders. So now I can bring down the white level, and then I can also change the gamma. So now I have this. This is completely black now. There's no more gray up here. Another thing is that you can see this is kind of jagged right here. So what I'll do is I'll do the matte choker, and I'll turn down the blur on it. Or actually, no, I'll turn the blur up just a little bit, and then the choke will compress that a little bit. And so now if I go back up to view current matte, now you can see I no longer have any issues with the leaf or anything. So it's just a really simple, really quick way to do it. As far as tracking the screen, that's a different issue that we'll get into more in the Mocha deep dive video that we're going to be working on. So now a couple other issues that you'll run into when you're keying is this video right here. When you're working with clients and they say, well, I have some green screen footage, that can be either really good or really bad. Say I got this video from a client and it's got this really, really bright green background, which would be fine if it was just like a coffee cup, for instance. But it's a girl with blonde, frizzy hair, which is a nightmare to key out, and I'll show you why. We're going to use Mocha, Continuum Grade, and then also Spill Remover. It'll clean this up really, really well. So the nice thing about Mocha is that you can use it on its own. I'm going to find Mocha and drag this over onto the clip. So you can see there's nothing going on yet. And then another issue that I have going on is you can see this dark right here is going to be an issue because it's not going to key the same way that it's going to key over here, obviously. So I'm going to crop this because if I go through here, you can see she doesn't move from her spot in the middle of the screen. So cropping it is not going to be an issue. So I'm going to go into video, and then under cropping, I'm going to go ahead and crop right. And so that reveals the background. And then I'm also going to crop the left because she's not moving. She's in the same spot. So it's not going to be too much of an issue. So I'm going to move this over to fit. Now we've got her on the screen. So I'm going to go into Mocha and I'm going to launch the Mocha user interface. I'm going to do like I did before and select that. And now select her head. And it's always best to select the head first and then the body. So now I'll just click on down there. And now you can see I've got her pretty much already masked. So I'm going to click on finish. But what I want to do though, I want to have a softer edge to my matte. So I'm going to do refine layer matte. And I'm going to select softer edges. And what that'll do is you can't see it right now, but you will see it on the final result. Is it softens up all the edges. If it was a car, for instance, I would select sharper edges, but because it's a person with frizzy hair, I'm going to select softer edges. So now I'm going to track her forwards and backwards.
5 minutes later.
Okay, so now she's all tracked, and I'm going to click the X to close it, save it, and now I'm back in here. Now again, nothing's happened yet. So I'm going to click on matte, open matte up, and I'm going to apply the matte. And now that's gone. However, you'll see that she's got this green halo right here because of the bright green screen, which transferred into her hair. I'm going to do spill remover. So add that to the effect, and boom, look at that. The spill is already gone. I didn't have to do anything special to it. So now I want to give her and the background this kind of Blade Runner kind of look. I'm going to select grade. So we'll do BCC plus grade. And now I'll do effects editor, and I'm going to select Blade Runner 2 or Blade Runner 1, Blade Runner 2. So we'll do Blade Runner 2 and apply that. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the warehouse. Do that. And now do FX Editor. And I'm going to do Blade Runner 2. And now she fits in there. But the thing is that you can tell she's cut out because she doesn't really blend in because there's no light wrap. Now, if I wanted to add a light wrap, I'll do BCC plus light wrap. You can see that there's no background. It doesn't recognize track 1 as the background. I'm going to move over to this clip right here. It's the same exact 2 clips. So I want to open both of them in Fusion. So if I was to select one and open it in Fusion, it would only open that one clip. It wouldn't open both of them. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to select both, right click, and then I'm going to go up to New Fusion Clip. And now you're seeing it's just this. So I'm going to go into Fusion, and you can see I've got both of them in here. So like I always do, this is just a me kind of thing. I put a background in there, and then I just connect it up here. This is the After Effects mentality that I built for 15 years working in After Effects. I still have that kind of layer mentality. If you watch my previous video on moving over to Resolve from Adobe, you'll understand. So I want to figure out which media in is which, because you have media in 1 and you have media in 2. So I'm going to select media in 2, and I'm going to hit 1 on my keyboard, which opens it up in the viewer 1. So I'm going to rename this to just girl. Right. So then this one obviously is going to be warehouse, but I'm still going to double check. Yep, it's still the warehouse. So I'm going to rename this one too. And it's function F2 to rename a node. Now I'm going to get rid of these nodes. Obviously we have the girl in front and then the warehouse. So I'm going to add a merge node. Okay, so now I want to add the girl in there, so I'm going to take a merge node, put it on here, make sure it turns blue. So now we've got the girl again, and I'm going to do a little bit of a crop. I'm going to move this up here just to get it up out of the way, and then I'm going to change the height. So now she's cropped out. But what I want to do now is I want to add Mocha, shift spacebar, Mocha, and now I'm going to go ahead and track her, launch Mocha, and I'm actually going to move this over here because you see this little thing right here? I noticed in a previous test of this that it caused an issue with the track. So that's why you always review your footage first to see where any potential problem areas are. So I'm going to click on that, and then so now she's all masked. So I'm going to click on Finish and Refine Layer Matte and Softer Edges. There are several different interfaces for Mocha. So the one that gives you the most is Classic, but it may be more than what you need. So I'll click on Essentials, and you can see this is just really super basic, but you don't get some of the options that you do in the Classic one. So I'm going to go back to Classic. So I still have the Softer Edges selected. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to track her again.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
So I'm going to close it and then save it just like I did before. And then of course I go into matte and apply matte. And we still got the green hair issue. So should have left that there. So I'm going to move this over here. We've got Mocha, we've got the girl, we've got the masking and everything. So we still need to do the spill remove. So spill remover. So now I want to do the light wrap. So I'll do shift spacebar. And so light gives way too many options. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to do wrap. So we'll do BCC plus light wrap. So add that. Again, we still have that same issue where it has the background layer enabled but no background layer selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look here. Okay, so we've got light wrap background. We got that one right there. So what I'll do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to pipe it in there. And now look at that. To show you how that worked, I'm going to show you the edge mat. So you can see that's where all the information from the background is. So I'm going to pull this back to the output. If I was just to pipe that in strictly to that, all I would have is the background. I would just have the light wrap. I wouldn't have the warehouse in the background. So that's why you have it set up this way. That way you have the background, you have the light wrap and everything. But now I still want to give that look to it. Shift spacebar again, grade, and select it, add it, make sure it's connected, and do effects editor, and do Blade Runner 2. And now you can see, because I did it right here as opposed to each one of them, it's doing it to both of them at the same time. Now, if I wanted to do a different look for each one, then I could add the grade in here and add a second grade in here if I wanted, but I wanted to apply that same grade to both clips. It may not seem easy at first, but once you understand the concept of nodes and how to use them within Fusion and how to use the different effects on which pages, it makes things a lot easier. Another thing that I could do is I could add this grade actually on the color page if I wanted to, but it's a lot easier because you can see all of the nodes that you're using in one spot as opposed to trying to remember where they are on which page in Resolve. I'm going to go back to the edit page, and now you can see I have it right there, and I have it right there. So it's the same look, it's just accomplished a little bit differently. And this one has the bonus of having the light wrap on there. So I'm getting the light from the warehouse to wrap around her, so she looks more like she's in the warehouse as opposed to just comped over the top of it. So last but not least, I'm going to go into particles. You can do particles in Resolve. You can do them really easy in Resolve. But the thing about that I mentioned before about presets is they give you a huge running start as far as getting your particles set up, because there are literally thousands of presets that you can add and you can tweak, you can track, you can mask, you can do all kinds of stuff in Boris that you just can't do in Resolve. There are some cases where I do actually like Resolve a little bit better for some basic particle effects like blowing away a logo, for instance. You can do it in Boris, I just found it's a little bit easier to do in Resolve. So again, that'll be coming up in a later video. Another thing that I really like about Particle Illusion is the way it's set up. I can just have fun. If I'm just burned out and I just want to have fun, I can go into Particle Illusion and I can just play because of the way that it's set up and all the different particles and stuff. And also when I get a new set of emitters, I just sit there and I play with them and I have fun with them and I see what they are, see what they can do and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to add particles to this video of this lighter. So this guy's taking his lighter and he's waving it back and forth, right? So this is just begging for particles. I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm going to search for particle illusion. And the easiest way that I found is not to search for it this way, because there's all these different particle things that you can do, is I'll just type in illusion instead. It just brings it up a lot faster. So I'm going to add this, and now there are things that you can do. You can add in preset from the menu. So these are just pre-selected presets, but they're not as fun, to be honest. And then there's also an effects browser if I want, but what I like is PI 2026. So I'm going to click on Launch PI 2026 and you'll see what I mean. Right now it's loading all the emitter libraries. So I have abstracts, I have backgrounds, I have cartoons, and you can see there's a preview right here. So if I go into cartoon smoke, for instance, you can see all this. And now look at this is what I was talking about as far as playing around. I can just sit here and I can just like have fun with particles. And then there's also like basketballs. So you could actually track a basketball being shot and you could have a trail of basketball particles. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to find emitters 2026, right? So I'm going to do this magic glitter trail. So if I play in here and I can see how it is. The way that I add this to the lighter is I just go in here and I click. So now it adds all these different things. I can change the tint color here if I want. So I could make it like a blue. And then the glow, you have a different gradient here. You could change the color of the gradient. So I'm going to make this blue so I can customize any of these colors. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply. Now this is what's super cool. So I've applied it, and if I watch it, right? So I'll click on watch and I can see what's going on. So I can see it. But what's not happening is it's not following the lighter, and that's the effect that we want. We don't care about it just sitting there. I'm going to go back to the start of the clip. I'm going to go into particle properties, and I'm going to preload a bunch of frames. So that way, starting up, it's just automatically right there. So I've already got that there. I got to go into transform tracking, and I go into emitter, and then I'm going to go into motion tracker Mocha and open up Mocha. And now I'm going to put this right here, right where I want it to be. And now I'm going to drag this over. And the thing about Mocha is you want to give it more information than just the basic information. So you want to give it as much information as possible. I'm going to do that. And pull this out a little bit, pull this out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and track it. Now I can refine this track later on, but that actually looked fairly decent to me. So I'm going to click on that to close it and click save. So now, watch this. This is so cool. So you can see now it's creating all the particles along with where the lighter is moving. And it also, what happens is you'll notice that where the lighter pauses, it creates more particles, so it looks more realistic. Now what I want to do is I want to tweak the parameters. So if I crank up the life, then what that does is it makes it so the particles last a little bit longer, and then I can reduce the number of particles. I can change the size, crank up the velocity if I want. And then the weight, what the weight is the effect that gravity has on them. So if I crank up the weight, then they're going to fall to the ground a little bit faster. And then I can also add a little bit of a spin and then also some randomness to it. And now if I play it, but say that I have a client and he wants more of an anime kind of look. So I'm going to go back into PI, and now I'm going to change the particle. I'm going to get rid of this. The only node that I need to click is that one. And so I've got rid of all of it. So what I want to do instead is I want to add this cool dots trail. So this gives a little bit almost an anime kind of look, but I'm going to change that to dots trail, and I'm going to move it down here so that way it's already on there. And then I'm going to click apply, and now because we already tracked it, guess what? I don't have to track it again. So it's more of a fun kind of look, and then I can still change the different things. I still have the settings I had before, so when I changed the emitter, it didn't change any of the settings. They're still all there, so I don't have to redo any of that work or anything like that. So that's just why I really like particle illusion. Now there is a standalone version of particle illusion. So if you're watching this and you haven't purchased Boris effects yet, you can go to Boris's website and you can download the standalone version of particle illusion and you can play around with it. Now, there are a couple limits to that. You can only use it for personal projects. You can import video into it, but it works differently. It's fun to play around with on the standalone version, but I highly recommend getting the suite so that way you have the plugin version. Those are just a few of my favorite effects in Sapphire, Continuum, and Particle Illusion. I really hope that you got some really cool ideas for some things that you can do for your clients. And also, if you have any questions or you have any suggestions or requests for me of effects that you'd like to see, go ahead and drop those in the comments. And then the next video that we're going to do, we're going to go through Mocha, Silhouette, and Synthize. We went through a little bit of Mocha in here, but we're going to do more of a deep dive into Mocha and the different things that you can do there and how you can use it in Resolve. And then also a little bit on Silhouette and then also Synthize. And Silhouette it's like Fusion on steroids, and it has some really cool AI stuff for selecting and masking objects. Also Synthize, which is for 3D tracking and camera solving and things like that. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, so that way when I drop the new videos, you'll be notified right away. And so thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you later.